Alright, I'm Matthew and I'm here to talk about how music streaming services like Spotify are overall negatively affecting artists in the music industry. So I'm going to talk about how they don't pay artists enough, they inhibit the ability of artists to gain popularity, and they're in control of their own independent market. So first of all, streaming services don't really pay artists very much for each time that their song is listened to. DigitalMusicNews.com provided a chart that says that it takes 380,000 listens on your Spotify account to earn a monthly minimum wage of $1,472. What that means is that less popular artists, which I'm classifying as 1 to 5 million annual listens on Spotify, would only be making between $3,800 and $20,000 annually. This really isn't enough to pay for decent living conditions or professional recording equipment. So more popular artists, which I'm qualifying as like 5 million to 50 million, someone with 35 million plays in the middle of that range would make about $130,000. But that isn't really a lot for a full-size band that has a fan base as big as 35 million people. In fact, if an artist this popular were to go on tour nationally, all this income would pretty much get quickly eaten up by travel fees, equipment fees, venue rentals, and whatnot. So an article on digitalmusicnews.com listed the profits and costs that an indie band called Pomplamoose experienced on a 28-day sold-out tour last year. They reported that a total cost of $148,000, which they spent on hotel, airfare, gas, employee wages, production, and equipment, and then they only made a revenue of about $136,000 from ticket sales and merch sales and even a corporate sponsorship on top. So what this meant was that the band ended up losing $12,000, so they had to rely on that money that they made from Spotify to even cover for just touring. As of right now, Spotify pays its artists a maximum of 0.0038 cents per listen, and that equivocates to about 260 streams required to make $1 on Spotify. Second of all, streaming services create a gap where large artists gain popularity exponentially and smaller artists struggle to get attention. Spotify manually selects which artists are shown on their homepage and advertises its users only the most popular artists. What this does is it creates a gap where up-and-coming artists don't really get the attention that they may deserve. For example, Kali Uchis, a solo artist who was featured on 2 Grammy-nominated records, gets about 24 million plays a year, and that's according to her Spotify profile. Using the chart I mentioned earlier, 24 million listens only gets about $80,000 of income from music streaming annually, and that's it for someone who's been nominated on 2 Grammy-nominated records, tours internationally, and has been featured in huge music festivals across America. My third and final point is that streaming services have complete control over their own market, which is resulting in artists trying to find ways to exploit the system to keep a stable profit. So Spotify is gradually paying artists less and less each year. In 2014, they were paying their artists 0.0084 cents per listen. But in 2017, just 3 years later, they're paying them 0.0038 cents per listen. That's less than half. To compensate for this pay drop, artists are starting to just dump as much material as possible on Spotify to try to collect as much revenue as possible. For example, the Migos Culture 2 album has been criticized for doing this. It has 24 tracks and an hour and 45-minute long runtime. And it's been criticized for diminishing the creative process in exchange for profit. And I see this as causing the overall music quality to go down, and artists that can exploit the system will end up running the industry. And for those reasons, that's why I believe that music streaming like Spotify will ultimately be the end of the music industry in the next 10 years.
All right, the proposition is identified. The contents are previewed. Some of the phrasing in there has the negative terminology. You want to get rid of that as best as possible, but we generally know where you're headed with your argument. The controversy, I think, could probably be enhanced a little bit by some criticism from people in the particular industry, either artists or industry people who have got similar kinds of criticisms to yours. Might enhance the ethos of your argument a little bit if you could get their testimony to add to your presentation. That seemed to me to be the thin part of the argument and the body of the speech. When you get to the structural stuff, you signpost it pretty clearly in the body of the speech. There's usually a pretty good explanation, but most of these are based on kind of hypothetical situations. There are a couple places where you plug in an example. But not to put too fine a point on it, like you said, some bands are just not as popular as others are going to be, and so that they can't support themselves. That's, how is that different from 40 years ago or 20 years ago or 10 years ago? There needs to be a little bit more explanation of that. One of the things that I'm missing, for instance, is a comparison of previous revenue streams and how they have disappeared, or how they, the best argument that I heard, the best piece of information that I heard in your presentation that kind of supports that position is the decline over the last 3 years in the amount that they're paying per stream, because that certainly suggests that there is an economic decline that's going on per stream. The idea, I assume that their explanation is that their streams have gone up, and so it shouldn't be too big a deal for you. But obviously, not everybody has gone up, and that's, I think, the argument that you are trying to make here. Like I said, I like the examples. You explain everything pretty clearly. There are other questions. For example, you make it sound. You did mention, for instance, with the one band about all their other revenue streams, they had to rely on Spotify to cover some things. But even with all of their ticket sales and merchandise sales, they still ended up losing money. And then the question I have is the streaming, for instance, affecting merchandise sales? Is it affecting purchases of music? Since people can just stream it, they don't purchase it anymore. I think that needs to be explained a little bit more. I think you've got a potentially stronger argument here if you could explain that a little bit more. All right, thank you.